Expectations are growing for the 2025 season, but there are questions that could limit this team's ceiling. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I am your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, your New England Patriots expert, host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and I'm also a sports talk show host veteran. On today's show, the compelling versatility of the wide receiver room and the enticing impact this coaching staff could have on the rookie class. But first, we discuss the growing expectations of a team coming off back-to-back 4-win seasons and the challenges that they will face. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On yesterday's show, I gave the Patriots offseason an A- for the grade. And now some of you might disagree with that. You might think the Patriots deserved more than an A-. I would not go any lower than an A-. Maybe your debate back and forth with yours truly would push me towards an A or an A+. I'm not sure, but I gave him an A-. I am sure that Pro Football Focus gave the Patriots offseason an A+. Can't get better than that. And the Patriots tires, they are being pumped everywhere. You look locally, you look nationally, the expectations continue to grow for a football team that won only 4 games last season after winning, you guessed it, only 4 games in 2023. But let's talk about some of these expectations, and let's talk about some of the challenges that this team will face, some of the obstacles that could get in the way of this team reaching its full potential. Greg Bedard at Boston Sports Journal wrote this recently. What are my expectations for this team? If the coaching staff is as good as we think it is and is a huge improvement over the past couple of seasons, then I do expect the Patriots to challenge for a postseason spot. Mike Renner of CBS Sports posted right after the draft that the Patriots arguably had the largest single off-season talent increase that he has ever seen a franchise have in his 13 years of being an analyst for CBS Sports. Not counting, he added, not counting adding quarterbacks. Karen Guregian, the OG at Mass Live, she wrote recently, arriving on the heels of back-to-back 4-13 seasons and inheriting one of the worst rosters in the NFL, Vrabel has managed to flip the script in short order. Instead of continuing to head further into the abyss, he's risen above the fray and created some modest expectations for the bottom-feeding Patriots. Modest expectations. Karen continued, he's provided a measure of hope 5 months ahead of the start of the 2025 regular season. While the Patriots haven't played a game, they've already gotten from the mat in some eyes. There's actually talk of them possibly making the playoffs. There's been some talk about them possibly making the playoffs. There's no doubt that this roster on paper is much better than it was last year. We went through some of that during yesterday's show. I'm not going to bore you going over that again. But there are legitimate challenges. There are legitimate obstacles that could get in the way of this team hitting their ceiling. If you think they're on the cusp of the playoffs, there are some questions that could have them falling short of even that. If you think they're a playoff team, there are questions that could get in the way of them getting into the postseason. Let's start here. There is lots of new. There is new all over the place at Gillette Stadium. It's a new car dealership. It's not a used car dealership. It's a new car dealership. There's lots of new. There's new staff, new coaching staff everywhere. New coaching staff offensively, defensively, not as much on special teams. There's obviously a new head coach. And with a new staff, with all of these new names and new egos and new personalities, it could take some time for these guys to find their groove. It's not easy to turn over the entire staff and just like that click. Not easy. There's also new schemes involved. For the players that have been here past years on defense, there's going to be a new scheme. Terrell Williams, Mike Vrabel, what they do is different. For the offense, of course, Josh McDaniels. Now, there are some guys here that are left over from 2021. Ramondre is one of them. Hunter Henry is another. Kendrick Bourne is another. So those guys will have some kind of a feel for what McDaniels wants to do offensively. But a lot of these guys on the offensive side and defensive side, save for the dudes that came in with Vrabel, in essence, like Harold Landry and Robert Spillane, those guys have played underneath Vrabel and Williams. They understand what he asks of them and what the scheme is. But there's a lot of players on this football team that will be playing within a scheme for the first time. They will be playing within these schemes for the first time. Just tons of roster turnover. And just like when you talk about the staff, finding that chemistry, finding that flow, it might take a little while for so many new faces on the field to figure out what the other guy is doing. It's almost impossible to gain chemistry overnight. It could take a month. It could take 2 months. We don't know. Then we move to the quarterback. Sophomore season, so to speak, for Drake May. He has played in about 10 and a half NFL games in his NFL career. We're just figuring out who Drake May is. He showed flashes. I'm optimistic. I think Drake May is going to end up being one of the better quarterbacks in football. I think he has the talent to be a top 5 to 8 guy. Will he get there? I don't know, and I certainly can't guarantee you that. I feel good about his chances, but we don't know until we see it consistently from him. So there are still some questions about Drake May, the turnover-worthy plays, putting himself in harm's way, running with the football. Then he has a new offensive coordinator, his second offensive coordinator in 2 years. And if you go back to UNC, this is his 4th offensive coordinator in his last 4 years playing football. That's a lot of change, even for a smart, hard-working quarterback like May. A lot of change. So new offensive coordinator, which means new scheme. Yes, you're going to mix things in that he's used to doing, and you want him to feel comfortable, but inevitably, this is a new scheme. He's working with new weapons. Stefon Diggs, Kyle Williams, Travion Henderson. You know the names. But he's working with new weapons around him. He's working with a new center in Garrett Bradbury. Unless Jared Wilson beats him out. Doesn't matter. He's still working with a new center. He's going to have a new right tackle, a new left tackle, probably a new left guard. So almost an entirely new offensive line in front of him. And you know the NFL is going to adjust. The NFL has film. They're going to make life harder for May in his second season. And there's the learning curve. Look at Josh Allen. From year one, his rookie season, he completed 52.8% of his passes for just over 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. In his second year, he completed 58.8% of his passes, 6% better than what he did in his rookie season. He had 3,089 yards, more than 1,000 yards more than his rookie season. He threw for 20 touchdowns, which doubled his touchdowns, and he cut his picks by 3. Drake May should, and I believe will be better, but I'm not sure how much better. Josh Allen made that leap in year 3, that special leap. And I also would not be surprised on the other side of the football that we have some slow starts from some guys that don't quite feel comfortable with what they're being asked to do, given what they had done under prior regimes. Then we look at the draft class. I'm high on the draft class. Most of you are high on the draft class. But we've got to see what happens if they have a little bit of a slow start. What happens if Will Campbell has to get used to playing left tackle at the NFL level and goes through some early struggles? What happens if Travion Henderson struggles a little bit, jumping into the NFL pool and working with Josh McDaniels for the first time? Kyle Williams, we know the history at receiver, the recent history of the draft picks that we have seen come in and then go away. Is Kyle Williams going to be the next in line, or will he be able to break away from that pack and truly show himself worthy early in his rookie season? Now, I think this rookie class can have a big impact, but if they get off to a slow start, if they take 6 to 8 weeks to truly get going, that means your left tackle is going to get off to a slow start, and two of your most explosive, maybe your most explosive offensive players get off to a slow start. So there are some challenges, especially early in 2025, that could derail the expectations, the ceiling of this team. Speaking of Kyle Williams, the Patriots have added not only talent to the wide receiver room, but versatility. That's coming up next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Yes, even though we got some really bad news here locally, the NBA playoffs will continue, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. That describes the series that we've been watching recently. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I mean, which players are showing up in the biggest moments? Is this now Jaylen Brown's series? How could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? If you're new to FanDuel, check it out. It's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If that $5 bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. There has been an undeniable thirst here in New England from fans and the media for a true bona fide number one wide receiver, an alpha in the room. And I don't think the Patriots have added that this offseason. Unfortunately, I don't think that they've brought in a true number one guy. Stefon Diggs is an easy upgrade over many that have been in that room the past couple of years. As long as he comes back healthy, as long as he looks about 75, 80% of who he has been, he's one of the best receivers in that wide receiver room, if not the best receiver in that wide receiver room. But he's not a number one guy anymore. He's just not. So that's one of the questions about this team's roster that wasn't really answered during this offseason, finding that number one guy. But here's the good news. The Patriots have added a ton of versatility at the wide receiver position. Let's begin with inside-outside capability. Having guys that can play in the slot, having guys that can play outside, guys that can move along the line of scrimmage and make life difficult for the defense. Bernd Buckmaster at Pat's Pulpit wrote this about Kendrick Bourne in 2021. In 2021, Bourne spent 37.8% of his offensive snaps in the slot, 60.9% on the outside. So Bourne, in the Josh McDaniels offense back in 2021, he played 37.8% of the offensive snaps he was out there for in the slot, 60.1% of his snaps on the outside. Inside-outside versatility. Then we get to Diggs. Phil Perry wrote this about Diggs. He spent 52.8% of his snaps in the slot last season with the Texans. That's per Pro Football Focus. So Diggs spent 52.8% of his snaps in the slot, which means he spent, 47, 48% of the other snaps that he had not in the slot. Versatility. Kyle Williams at Washington State played about 25% of his snaps in the slot, about 75% on the outside. Jalen Polk, you go back to his college days at Washington, and he played 41.1% of his snaps during his senior season in the slot. Played about 58, 59% not in the slot. So you've got Kyle Williams and Diggs and Bourne and Polk. All of those guys have had experience playing in the slot and also playing outside. Versatility. And you know for a fact that Josh McDaniels is going to love the ability that he has as a play caller and play designer to manipulate the defense at the line of scrimmage, creating those mismatches. Having somebody lined up outside, they slide inside. Having somebody inside, they slide outside. McDaniels is no doubt going to play those games with defensive backs all day long and linebackers all day long. He's going to want to make the life of a defense miserable week in and week out. And part of how you can do that is by utilizing your team's versatility. But it's not just the versatility as far as where these guys can line up. It's also having the versatility to deploy explosiveness and some gadget elements to your offense. Now, I'm not just talking about trick plays, and we know McDaniels loves a couple of trick plays. So he is one of the biggest fans of trick plays. Very Andy Reid-esque. Loves dialing up trick plays. But you do have players in the wide receiver room that McDaniels can take advantage of with their explosiveness and their ability to be a gadget player, so to speak. Pop Douglas. We know what Pop Douglas can do when he has some space. He can be absolutely devastating with space. And I would just have to imagine that McDaniels will take advantage of that. Kyle Williams, when he was at Washington State, he was a yards after the catch beast. One of the best players in the country last year when it came to yards after the catch. He'll kill you in the screen game. I believe he had not one, not two, but 3 touchdowns on screen passes last year. He's a menace. And Kendrick Bourne, you go back to 2021 again with Josh McDaniels in this offense. And what we saw was a Kendrick Bourne that was lining up everywhere, not only outside and inside, as I discussed already, but he was also put in the backfield at times. He was utilized with, jet sweeps, trying to hit the perimeter. So you start to see all of these receivers, and many of them are interchangeable parts, and many of them have different aspects to their games. So you can swap one guy in one spot for another guy in another spot. You can have somebody take a jet sweep. You can line somebody up in the backfield. You can line somebody up anywhere you want, frankly. So there's a lot of versatility. You might not have a true number one guy in that room, but you have a number of guys that can do a number of different things, which McDaniels, as a play caller with his reputation and his resume, he should be able to get the most out of players like that. The versatility. And we're just talking about wide receivers here, like natural receivers. We can also lump in the running backs when we have this conversation, because Ramondre Stevenson caught almost 70 balls a couple of years ago. Antonio Gibson was a receiver in college. And we have waxed poetic about TreVeyon Henderson and his ability to catch the football and take advantage of mismatches against linebackers and safeties. He's got that double move highlight that I'm sure many of you saw down the sidelines at Ohio State. So you've got Henderson, Gibson, and Stevenson. If they all make the team, Gibson's the question, I think. But you've got Mondre, Gibson, and Henderson who could all line up in different places. You could have 2 backs in the backfield, pony formation. You could take advantage of the ability, all 3 of your running backs, to catch the football and make some plays. You can have them deployed in the screen game. McDaniels loves a good screen. You could even move all 3 of your running backs to the line of scrimmage. You can line up Stevenson on the line of scrimmage. He's done that, especially in the red zone. He's done that. Gibson can do that with his experience at wide receiver. TreVeyon Henderson is going to be capable of doing that. And you also have pieces that should help you in the red zone. You've got a big-bodied receiver in Mac Hollins who does some really good work inside the red area. Diggs, with his ability, his route running, should help you in the red zone. So you start to put all of these pieces together, and you take those pieces, you give them to Josh McDaniels, and you say, Josh, do your best work. And the fact is, he has a lot of different components to this offense that could make life absolutely miserable for any defensive coordinator. Versatility, explosiveness, gadgetry, running backs that can be receivers, guys that can produce in the red zone. This offense should be much better than what we've seen the past couple of years. There was one comment that stood out to me after the first day of rookie minicamp, and it has stuck with me. It's coming up next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's look back at the 2024 draft class. It was so long ago. Joe Milton, the backup quarterback last year. Joe Milton, the guy who was traded for a compensatory 5th-round pick just about a month or so ago. He was the second best talking point of the 2024 draft class. Could you imagine that? You had Drake May, and then what else did you have? Jalen Polk failed. Caden Wallace got hurt. Javon Baker failed. Layden Robinson was out there in stretches, but he wasn't great. He was kind of all over the place. I mean, that was it. And I'm not writing that draft class off. Hopefully, you know my philosophy by now, which is I give every single young player, I give them at 2 years. You get 2 years to figure it out. If you don't show anything by the end of your second season, I stop believing in the idea that you're going to be an NFL player. So I'm not giving up on those guys from last year's draft class. However, it's just to put things into perspective here of how that draft class fell well short of expectations. And there's fault to be thrown all around. The blame pie, you can split it up. Yes, some of that is on the player. No doubt about it. If not most of it is on the player. Some of it's on injury like Caden Wallace. But some of it, I believe was also on the coaching staff. A coaching staff that was not ready. A coaching staff that failed to teach the young players, to develop that rookie class. I don't know how you want to split it. I don't know if you want to give the staff 10%, 20%. I couldn't care less. The point is, the coaching staff that was just not nearly good enough negatively impacted that draft class. That's what I believe. And they may never come back from it, unfortunately. But I bring all of this up because of what Kyle Williams said after the first rookie minicamp practice at the end of last week. Last Friday, Williams told the media that nothing at rookie minicamp had surprised him because the staff prepared him for what to expect during his pre-draft visit. So during the pre-draft visit, Patriots staff laid out what he could expect if he was going to join this football team. And that's what I want to talk about today, is the staff's impact on this rookie class. Also last year's class, but this rookie class. It could be huge because you have a better staff. You have a better head coach. Do any of us believe that Mike Vrabel doesn't have some kind of developmental plan for each and every player? He went to Cleveland last year. Part of going to Cleveland, and he has said this in multiple interviews, part of going to Cleveland was because he wanted to see not only the on-the-field part of it and continue to work with players and all that good stuff. He wanted to learn more about the front office operation and how Cleveland approached things and the conversations that they had and how they tried to look ahead, how they worked with developing guys. Now, we can have a different conversation about whether or not Cleveland was the best example to take from, but it is what it is. I have to imagine that Vrabel has a developmental plan post-Browns for this team that he has assembled along with Elliott Wolf and Ryan Cowden. And we know that Vrabel, one of his strong points, this has been mentioned by a bunch of people who have played for him, coached with him, know him, his attention to detail is almost obsessive. And when you have that kind of attention to detail from the head coach, then we know he's going to be watching all of these young players like a hawk. And he's going to understand what guys do well, what they don't do well, how they can maybe tweak something to make themselves better. That attention to detail goes hand in hand with developing young players. Because if you're paying attention to all the details, you can relay those details to the young players. And if they pick them up, if they pick up what you're putting down, that will make them better in the end. And you've got an experienced coaching staff throughout. Defensive offensive staff, tons of experience. Do we have any concern about Josh McDaniels and his ability to teach an offense to players? I don't. And you can go down the line of his assistants on the offensive side. Thomas Brown, we've talked about it, overqualified. Todd Downing, overqualified. You have an experienced staff throughout. Now we look at some of these rookies that are coming in and who they get to work with. Let's focus on the offensive line. Let's focus on Will Campbell, Jared Wilson, Marcus Bryant. Let's just look at them as the example of how this coaching staff has been assembled to get the best out of these rookies and to develop them efficiently. You have 3 offensive line coaches devoted to 11 or 12 guys. You have them working with these offensive linemen every day. You have 3 offensive line coaches, which allows you to pay extra attention to the rookies who are trying to transition into the league, because 1 guy, 2 guys obviously spread more thin. Don't forget that Mike Vrabel, when he was in Cleveland last year, spent a lot of time with the offensive line, working with them, talking with them. So he has a better understanding of O-line play now. I mean, worst comes to worst, if you're in an emergency situation, which I don't know why you would be with 3 offensive line coaches and Vrabel as the head coach, but worst comes to worst, you could always get Dante Scarnecchia on the phone. It's already been reported that Scarnecchia is around to help. He's not coaching. He's not at the facility. He's not going to cut these guys off at the knees, but he's a phone call away if you have some kind of question. So that's the difference. You're walking in, just as, Campbell, Wilson, and Bryant as an example here. You're walking in and you're working with an experienced staff that has 3 coaches staffed through the gills that will have a clear plan, being watched by a head coach who also has recent experience working with offensive linemen. It's a different world than 2024. And then you can move away from the coaching staff and you could go to the on-field mentorship. Morgan Moses with the offensive line. You don't think he's going to be able to help Campbell, Wilson, and Bryant and Conley from Boston College and some of the UDFAs that they brought in? You don't think that Morgan Moses is going to be able to lend his knowledge to those young offensive linemen to help them, to guide them? You didn't really have that last year. Now, I know you had Mike Owenu, but he's flopping and flipping and flipping and flopping from right tackle, right guard, right tackle, right guard. Who'd you have? You had David Andrews. David Andrews could certainly help. But Moses, he could fill that role. And we saw the kind of gravity that he holds at the podium. You can just imagine him in the locker room. Wide receiver. Those guys were kind of on an island, right, of misfit toys last year. But now you bring Diggs in. You bring Hollins in. 2 solid veterans. 2 guys that want to help run that room. 2 guys who are willing to take young players and put them under their wing. Defensive line, Harold Landry, Milton Williams. Veteran guys who have been there. So when you look up and down this team and you listen to Kyle Williams saying, I was prepared because the coaching staff, they told me what I should be ready for if I was drafted. It's just a small part of the bigger plan. And you feel like this team has an actual plan, from Vrabel to the staff to the on-field mentorship. This rookie class has a chance to make an impact immediately because of the structure that has been put together. That wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. On tomorrow's show, the schedule is officially released. It's schedule time. Reach out to me on Twitter at Nick C Radio. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel as well. Thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL Draft, of course, it's donezo. But the news keeps coming. Hosts Kyle's Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.